Hello everyone, my name is Karen Finch and I am the founder and CEO of Legally Yours, and I am so incredibly excited, honoured and privileged to be interviewing the absolutely amazing Rugare Gomo, high performance business coach and leader of the Business Summit. So thank you Rugare for joining me.
Thank you so much for interviewing me. It's so exciting. I've been doing all the interviews. I've interviewed you. Now you get to interview me.
I know, and I'm really excited about this because, you have such a brilliant way of bringing out all the stories of everybody else and getting us to shine and sparkle in our ways. And now I get to do the same for you. So thank you for the honour of asking me to do this.
Very welcome.
So the theme of today's episode is really about talking and letting people know that everything is okay. And that's a really simple sentence, but my goodness, it has such a lot of context and power at this particular time with Corona and COVID and restrictions and isolation and fear and anxiety and all those sorts of things. So you and I had spoken about this before in a couple of different conversations we had. And I was really keen to talk a little bit about I guess looking at it from a perspective of some people, this isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to them. For some people it is. Corona is a very new, it might be an experience that they've never ever felt before in their lives, but there have been other situations, scenarios and countries that have experienced similar type of catastrophes. And I guess I'd really love for you to share your story about what you went through growing up in Zimbabwe. And also then how that's making you feel and react to today's situation.
Thank you so much, Karen. And, firstly, what I'd love to do is just to acknowledge our frontline people, the health professionals, the police and the army. They're doing such a great job in keeping us safe and putting themselves at risk. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. And as you said, everything will be okay.
Yes.
And I have that strong belief that everything will be okay. So growing up in Zimbabwe, in the early 90s, we had the AIDS epidemic, the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And Zimbabwe was actually one of the highest rates of HIV infections in the world at that time. So 1 in 4 adults was HIV positive. It's horrifying.
That is huge. And that's very hard to even my mind to comprehend. That statistic there, that is huge. Yep.
Yes, at that time Zimbabwe had good tracking and good stats, and that was being recorded, and we were the highest infection rates in the entire world. And so over time, there weren't actually antiviral drugs that were readily available. So it was very common to unfortunately, hear of friends passing away. I've had cousins, aunts, uncles passing away. And it became that bad where there were funerals on a weekly basis, where then that was impacting the economy. And so the government actually then instituted things where you could only go to a funeral if it was a really close family member, because in Zimbabwean tradition, you'll have over 1,000 people go to a funeral to show their respects. And so that was just a huge situation in Zimbabwe that a whole country dealt with in essence. And so over a decade, we had millions of people unfortunately pass away.
And that's amazing, because the context that you talk about, that there are so many similarities in relation to what people are experiencing today with not being able to mourn the passing of loved ones because of the restrictions. So there's that similarity. There's also, and I know you've mentioned this to me before, about the not touching as well, because when you were growing up, there was that fear that you couldn't, touch each other as readily or hug or show affection.
Yeah. And that came out.
Yes.
And that came out as well. So after the AIDS epidemic, we also had the cholera outbreak as well. So cholera is a disease that, once you get it, you can actually die very quickly as well. So you had to always wash your hands. When you had fruit, you had to wash the fruit very carefully. We had to stop shaking hands and stop hugging, because that's how cholera gets passed on. Yeah. So we were trained to do that. But not only did we have the cholera outbreak once, we've had it several times, but sometimes it may focus in the whole country, and sometimes it's in different parts of the country. So that is also something that we have dealt with as well. And so we had to learn inside of the Zimbabwean context where we love to shake hands, we love to hug,
Yes.
to actually alter some of our traditions to take care of our own health. Again, medication wasn't readily available. It was maybe available for the middle class and the wealthy at that time.
And how sort of amazing to acknowledge that. I mean, we've kind of been experiencing this, particularly within Australia, for the last sort of 6-7 weeks, really, or 5 weeks. We've just clocked over in isolation. That was a 10-year period, and probably even more when you say there were different outbreaks of cholera as well that were coming through. So tell me, growing up in that atmosphere, were there times that I guess it felt like that was the normal? And was there an appreciation, do you see from your point of view growing up in that environment, that you really did modify the way that you all behaved towards each other? And was there a point where you returned to shaking hands and doing those things? Was it okay?
Absolutely. There was definitely a point when it became okay to shake hands and hug and all of that, but that happened over time only after the government advice was provided. Now, in the early 90s, Zimbabwe did have a good health care system, where in 2020, Zimbabwe no longer has a good healthcare system. So unfortunately, if something like that were to happen, we wouldn't actually know when to proceed to actually shake hands again. So inside of this new, pandemic in Zimbabwe, particularly right now, because of the lack of good healthcare system, it is very difficult for people to know what to do. But in those days, in the early days, because they had a good health system, it was easy to track. Just like here in Australia, we're very fortunate to be living here in Australia, where we've got great hospitals, some of the best in the world. We've got highly trained doctors and nurses, and we are flattening the curve. Doesn't mean we have to be complacent, but we are all doing our part to flatten the curve. Absolutely. So that gives me confidence, and should give all of us confidence that everything will be okay.
And I guess, do you feel like that has helped you? Oh gosh, my puppy dog is crying.
Puppy, yes, decided to join the business summit.
That is so funny, because yes, I am in isolation, as you can see, and it's with my puppy dog, who is now barking.
And this is the New World Order, and there's nothing to apologize, because this is how the New World Order is now.
Absolutely. So let me, and I will put myself on mute when I ask you this question, but let me ask you, do you feel like now going through Corona that has kind of triggered you in a memory back to those times, and perhaps has made you more resilient to what's now experiencing of what you're going through?
Absolutely. I came to Australia in 2001 when the Zimbabwean crisis was happening, where there was food shortages were being taken out of schools for political demonstrations. So for me, being here in Australia, I feel that I am more resilient to deal with the New World Order, because in Zimbabwe, circumstances were changing like that. And so it was survival. There weren't the hospitals to go to. If there was no food, you had to find a way to get food. It wasn't like the government is going to support you in getting that. It was starve or die, literally. So I have an experience that, we will be okay. We have food in the shops. We have toilet paper.
We certainly do. And do you think also that explains why there are some people that are having quite a calm reaction to what's going on, and then you've got the others where they're highly anxious, and even, I mean, if I put this into a legal context of the industry I work within, we've got ones that are really standing up and rising to the occasion, and doubling their efforts to serve, and then you've got other lawyers who have gone in complete hibernation and shut down and just locked their offices and walked away. I find that reaction really interesting. Do you think often because of what we've experienced personally of how we can then deal?
Completely. This is a condition of being human in itself. So all human beings, we have fear. We have things that make us really scared, and sometimes our circumstances can be worse off than what we're facing right now. So for example, I remember when I nearly went bankrupt when I started my first business. I had no idea what I was doing. But I had to leave my apartment, I had to move in with friends, I had to ask them to cook for me and feed me for over 8 months. I slept on the floor, and I had an uncertain future. So for myself, when I compare when I started out in business, that was scarier than the New World Order for myself, because I could not see, I was so scared. I didn't have the tools and I was not empowered to deal with my situation at that time. And so for many of us, particularly in the Western world, this is going to be new. Something like this hasn't happened in the Western world since World War II. So there is going to be lots of fear as well, because the brain doesn't know what is going to happen. So we're all in survival mode. So many of us are in survival mode. So this may be different, for people who have experienced domestic violence or have been close to bankrupt, or women who have been raped, or men who have been raped. These are horrific situations, horrific. And so getting out of something like that, in comparison to what we may be dealing with, the brain may relate to it very differently in that regard. Hence why you may see some people really calm, because it's like, well, I've just come out of a domestic violence relationship, so this is nothing.
Absolutely. And it hankers sort of back to that notion of the resilience that you build from these experiences. So
Yes.
I think it's absolutely invaluable for people to hear other people's experiences, to understand that in other parts of the world they have experienced things like this, and you will survive. And I think it's really interesting from what I've observed as well, just coming through in the very short period of time that COVID has been here in Australia, is we're almost kind of now getting out of some survival mode into a bit of a thriving mode, where people are like, okay, I'm actually having more time with my children and getting more cuddles
Yes.
during my day, or I'm getting to spend that quality time with my partner, or I'm getting more done in my business because I'm not traveling to and from work every day. So it's a shift of mindset, isn't it? Out of
Correct.
fear and anxiety into this is the circumstances, and I'm going to take it and thrive with it.
And what you said is so powerful, because what has been happening is that our brain is now seeing the opportunities that are possible inside of this new world order. So when the brain can't see the opportunities, it goes into either fight, flight, or freeze mode. But when you can see opportunity and possibility, that's when our human spirit rises up as well to take advantage of what's possible in that regard. And that's the human spirit wherever you are in the world, whether you're in Iraq or South Sudan in the war, Zimbabwe during the hyperinflation times, DRC, where it's one of the longest wars on earth, or the Ethiopian famine. There've been so many horrific situations out there in the world,
Yes.
and we will get through it.
Yes.
But I think what's unique about this situation is that it has called for a global response. Together we can get through this together. And I think that's because of the whole new technology and internet. So as I mentioned, during the Zimbabwean, epidemic, there was no internet at that time. There wasn't Facebook or social media, but we're a highly connected world now. So together, we can get through this.
Absolutely. And I think that global response, and there have been so many moments of glorious beauty during this time. I was speaking to someone earlier today who was saying, they're on their normal run that they do, they now see birds that they've never seen before. That the water in the ocean is bluer than ever. There are some great moments of beauty and clarity, and wonder as a beautiful word that you always say to us. You want to help us live a wondrous life, and there are moments in this that are definitely happening. And I think that, there's lots to be proud of, but also, I guess, what's your view on, those people who are sort of sitting in that mindset of fear and anxiety, just also being able to acknowledge that that's okay too.
Yes,
okay too,
it is so okay. So this conversation isn't to say, oh, let's all be happy, yappy dappy. That's not the conversation. The conversation is to first accept that we are in a new world order. And I think that part of the anxiety, the stress, and is that I think some people think that we're going to go back to how it was in the past. Newsflash, we're not. This is a new world order. The world is actually altered as a result of this. So the sooner we can accept it, the more you can actually bring healing to yourself as well. And also grief. We can grieve our past. There's also some beautiful things that, in our past that we may no longer have. Some people have died as a result. That's very sad. That's horrible.
Yes.
And there have been many situations where now some kids may not have food because they're not going to school as well, and living on food handouts. Or an increase in homelessness, and there's high stress. So it's not to pretend that's not happening, but also accepting that it is happening as an access to regain our power.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, be able to have, through that acknowledgement and through that recognition of those feelings, you can then, like you say, heal yourself, because then you move on. But you can't actually move on until you recognize that that's the anxiety and the feelings that you have. But yeah, completely brilliant. I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about the Australian government's response to COVID.
Yeah.
And you've got some things on that. Yes.
It's very interesting. So I don't support necessarily any political party. I'm not, I don't support either Labour, the Greens, or Liberal. But what is interesting is how the coalition has responded to it. So typically the coalition is all about surplus, but inside of the New World Order, I'm really inspired that they've given up their ideology to really look at what's going to work inside of the New World Order. And what is working is really pumping in lots of money into the economy. So, this is not happening everywhere else in the world. It's not happening in Zimbabwe. Where's the money going to come from in Zimbabwe? It's not happening in Syria. Where's that money going to come from? And this is very similar to the well, I shouldn't say similar, but it reminds me of the Marshall Plan in 1948. I wasn't there, but in reading the books, surprise! After the world, or Europe, was coming out of World War II, the United States pumped in billions of dollars, 12 to 15 billions of dollars of aid into Western Europe, which was required. And inside of the New World Order that happened after World War II, what was really also inspiring after World War II was that in an age before that, women were not allowed to work. Yeah. And so in World War II, women were in the factories assisting. And then there was the whole conversation of, are we going to go back to the past where women are going to be at home? And no, that did not happen. Thank God. Thank God. Yes. Women actively became part of the working workforce and the economy as well.
Yes.
And contributed that way. Yes. So we have history to also demonstrate some of the things that have worked as well. And so I'm actually really inspired by what the Australian coalition government has done to pump in resources quite quickly, whether it is with JobKeeper, or even the Victorian government with the state government grants of $10,000, or the City of Melbourne that has made grants available as well. That's not happening everywhere else around the world.
Yes.
We're in a really privileged situation in that regard.
Absolutely. And even just on that point, the fact that the government are still, committing funds to the World Health Organization. You've got other governments who will remain nameless, but everyone will know who I'm talking about, who have actually pulled back their support and financial support of those of the World Health Organization at a time when we need them more than ever. And it's really interesting to see those different responses. But I think that certainly what will come out of a post-COVID-19 world is you will begin to see what's important, where our values and visions lie, which you're always talking about. And that's from a government level right down to, children, everyone. We'll all have to get very clear about our visions, values, and the way we want to see the world from now on, because we've been given a gift. The gift was a pause, and it was a global pause.
Yes.
Who knows if we'll ever have another situation, probably not in my lifetime, where the whole world has come to a standstill. And it's in that pause we have a moment to think, was everything okay tracking? Were there things I could change? And how would I want to live in the future? How do I want my children, to have this world? So, yeah, I think there is that beauty in it. But like you say, I think, everyone's responding differently and reacting differently based upon their own kind of experience. It's a human experience though, isn't it?
It is a very human experience. And, inside of the pause, this circumstance, and I'm calling it a circumstance because it will pass.
Yeah.
It will pass.
Yes.
That's the resilience of humanity. So this situation is going to make us stronger human beings. But what this situation also does is that it also magnifies the things that are not working. So if things were not working, this situation magnifies that. So whether things were not working in your home, whether things were not working in your business, whether things were not working in your friendships, they'll be magnified. But it will also magnify the things that are really working as well.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity. I say that use this time not to resist or run away from the things that are not working, but an opportunity to really reflect on, wow, I get to see that's really not working. That, wow, I don't really know how to connect to my 13-year-old son because I've been always at work. What am I going to do about that? You know? So it's not doom and gloom. See this as an opportunity for all of us to elevate ourselves as human beings for what really matters for us.
Just beautiful. And you know what I particularly love and about you being able to share your experience and your childhood and what you kind of experienced within your world. The wonderful thing is we see you as the beautiful man that you are today, you know, the one that is giving back to so many others and helping us and lifting us and helping us live wondrous lives, which I know is your vision and values. So from that adversity, from circumstances that can be lived, can become, you know, you can be okay and more than okay. You can thrive and you can actually give back. And I think that was just something I know from the discussions that we had. I wanted other people to understand is that, you know, you haven't lived a perfect life of privilege or, you know, smooth sailing, or, you know, you've had challenges. You've lived in a world that's had, in a country that's had great challenge, but from that you've been able to be okay, and we'll be okay too.
And we will be okay together.
Amazing, but
exactly.
But I'm trying to tie that all into the theme that we talked about.
Beautiful.
So I think it's just, thank you so much for making me hold you to that. And
thank you very much. And thank you for holding me to account to share this story. You know, I had reservations because I didn't want to come across as unsympathetic. I'm really sympathetic, you know, to what's happening. We are all impacted. You know, my family is in lockdown in South Africa. I've got family in Zimbabwe that are in lockdown. My brother is in New York, which is hard hit. So this is not like, oh, I'm okay, like, oh, just move on. But no, but we know that together as human beings, working together, putting our differences to the side, we can really come up with something really special. And we can get to define the kind of Australia that we really want to be newly. It's a great opportunity for us to do that right here.
Absolutely. And thank you, because I know you did have reservations. So I'm so pleased that we all got to hear that. And let's all band together and take the moment and the opportunity to acknowledge, accept, pause, reflect, and then thrive. Because, you know, there's going to be lots of good that comes out of this for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been wonderful. I always love chatting with you.
Sorry about my puppy dog. She wanted to get
I loved it. It's now enshrined in digital media forever.
I love it. She has a little secret. She has been a guest appearance on a couple of other podcasts too. She seems to love it when I record.
It's fantastic, you know.
So thank you, Rugare, and thank you for everything you do for all of us. And I'm very honoured to be part of this business summit. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For everybody listening to this business summit, thank you for your generous listening. My team and I are there for you as you navigate through these unprecedented times. If you are interested in having a conversation with me, feel free to email me at connect@rugaregomo.com. Thank you very much.